There has been some talk, specifically coming out of Scott Ritter, quite frankly, who's one of the alt commentators, that says basically that the Russians should be very, very afraid of the open Western corridor here in Ukraine, because he insists that there's so much weapons and materiel flowing from Western Ukraine to the east that the Russians, by concentrating so much on the east and the Battle of the Donbass, they are neglecting the West, and they're going to be overrun, and they're going to lose. And I have to admit something, and I'm sorry to say this, but it seems that Scotty Boy is getting a little he's getting over his skis a little bit. He should just calm down a little bit and not get so hysterical, because you see, the situation in Ukraine, there is an enormous battle going on in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbass, and the West has committed all kinds of money into resupplying the Ukrainian armed force with weapons. But you have to understand, all of these weapons, number one, you need to train on them. And all these weapons that are being sent, supposedly sent to Ukraine, well, the Ukrainian soldiers are not trained on them. It takes a while to train on them. It's not something that you can just pick up and start using right away. There are certain weapons, like an assault rifle, a handgun, a knife. Yeah, sure, you can pick that up and start using it right away. But like a howitzer, it's not that easy. I mean, it seems so. It seems that it ought to be easy, but it's not. You need to train on it. The howitzer of one army or another army, it's just two different weapons. They accomplish the same task, certainly, but how you operate it effectively, very different. So there's that one problem. And the the NATO members are sending like a hodgepodge of equipment, all kinds of different equipment. And so all of these different weapon systems, well, the Ukrainian soldiers, frankly, are not going to have the time to learn to use all of these weapons. So, it's almost useless. And on top of that, all these weapons, they do not have the technicians to maintain and repair them. So they're basically one-shot weapons. The second that they get jammed or broken somehow, that's it. They become junk that you just have to discard. So in a very real sense, they're not weapons that you can actually depend on. The second there's a problem with them, they become useless because you don't have the support personnel to fix them. Or the people who are operating them are not trained in repairing them and do not have the spare parts to repair them. And so that's the one problem with the weapons, or the second problem with the weapons. The third problem with the weapons is actually getting them from over here, the Polish-Ukrainian border, all the way over there to the actual fighting in eastern Ukraine. I've told you numberless times that I've crossed Ukraine on a motorcycle, and it took me 4 days, okay? I went from the border, to Lviv and spent the night in Lviv, then Lviv all the way to Khmelnytsi, and then Khmelnytsi to Kiev, and then Kiev to Poltava, and the last bit from Poltava to Kharkov. So it was 3.5 days. That's how long it took me on a motorcycle, without any kind of machine gun fire or anything. Now, everybody knows that from the west of Ukraine to the east, all the trains have been cut. All the train lines have been cut deliberately by the Russians. And the Russians, whenever they get an inkling that men and or materiel is assembling in West Ukraine, like around Lviv, they send some caliber missiles and blow that sky high. They did it a couple of days ago. Just annihilated, a whole installation with foreign fighters who were volunteers and foreign equipment. And they did this again. They'd done it already before, okay, in that particular location in Lviv, right? They're hitting every target at will. And they've got the intelligence to be accurate, to hit where it matters. And like, there was one video I saw where somebody was saying, see, they missed it. They hit like an empty field, which is true, but I mean, come on. See, if you throw a swarm of a dozen missiles, of course some of them are going to miss. That's inevitable. But the others are going to hit. And these hit, and so, it's kind of like copium kind of bullshit, right? But the point I'm trying to make. See, it's copium to think that just because on a map there aren't any Russian armies in the center of the country or to the west, it doesn't mean that the country is wide open. Because, see, on a technical level, yes, it is wide open. There's no defenders, no Russian armies or defenders here in the west, and none in the center. So, yeah, technically it's wide open. Now, you try to get from the Polish-Ukrainian border all the way to the Donbass. See how long you last before you get blown up. See how long it takes you, considering that the railways are inoperable. See how you fuel up your trucks, considering that the fuel depots have been destroyed, the refineries have been destroyed, and in Ukraine there is a serious gasoline shortage because of this. So, I'm not understanding this whole notion that, the Russians are losing because they're focusing too much on the east, on the Donbass. They're winning there. Everybody knows that they're winning, and anybody who says otherwise is just an idiot. The Russians are relentlessly grinding away at the Zelensky regime forces, and they're going to win. It's inevitable. It's like, night follows day kind of inevitable. There's nothing you can do to stop it, okay? So that's happening. But this notion that in the center of Ukraine, or the west of Ukraine, it's wide open, it's ignoring the realities, the practical realities of how you get men and equipment from the west to the east. At this time, you don't. Because even with the broken railway system and the lack of fuel, if trucks started rolling, from west to east with gear and men, they'd be annihilated. Come on, man. One truck with 30 guys, easy pickings. And it would be a tragedy for those 30 men. And of course, that's why NATO is not doing this, because they know. They can slide in, a few squads under cover of night, but like actually moving a whole army, it's just not possible. And so I'm just like, what the hell is the matter when you have people kind of like hysterically commenting on like, oh, the Russians are leaving it wide open. They've left an open door. What are you talking about? And just like when the Ukrainians say that they are going to carry out a massive counteroffensive in August and expel all the Russians from the Donbass, the east, from the Donbass, and even from Crimea. Even from Crimea, they're going to expel them all in this August counteroffensive. What planet are you living on, man? What the fuck are you talking about? Huh? I mean, honestly, what are you talking about? I mean, there is no way at present for the Ukraine armed forces to assemble the equipment necessary for such a counteroffensive in 2-3 months' time. June, July, August, 3 months. It's impossible. Okay? You don't have the equipment now, and you can't get it in because it keeps getting blown up by the Russians, number one. Number two, you don't have the manpower. The Zelensky regime does not have the manpower, or at least the trained manpower. They talked the other day of raising a 1 million man army. Are they out of fucking minds? No, it's not going to happen. And the professional army that they have right now, which is in the east of the country, it is getting ground to dust. And all of these young men are dying for nothing. And that's the thing that outrages me about this whole situation. The Zelensky regime should sue for peace. It should try to declare a ceasefire and sue for peace and figure out a way to negotiate with the Russians to end this. Because there's no other way to end this without the massive loss of life and ultimate defeat. Because that's what's going on. There is simply no way for the Russians at this stage to lose. It's just not possible. Of course, a meteor could hit Moscow and another meteor at the same time hit the central command of the army that is fighting in the Donbass. Well, yeah, in those circumstances, yes, the Russians would lose. Yeah. What are the odds of that happening? High or low? You tell me. I mean, come on. Copium, don't get high on your own supply. It's all good and well to try to cope with the situation, but you have to be realistic at some point. And what's happening, and of course the thing that the people in Ukraine do not want to face, is that their government, the Zelensky regime, is selling them down the river. the Zelensky regime has been promised money and protection in the West if they keep on throwing away Ukrainian lives in a war that they cannot win. That NATO and everybody in the United States intelligence and State Department and Pentagon know that they cannot win. It is not possible. And yet the Ukrainians continue, or let me phrase it, the Zelensky regime and the neo-fascist pigs of that despicable regime keep throwing away the valuable lives of Ukrainian soldiers for nothing. And they keep coming up with these pie-in-the-sky notions that there's going to be a million-man army and that in August there's going to be a great counteroffensive, with all these Western weapons that will arrive intact and spotless to Ukraine, and which all this 1 million-man army will be able to operate just like that, and it's going to be wonderful. And at the end of this counteroffensive, at the end of expelling all the Russians from the east, the south, and Crimea, we're all going to sit around a campfire and have some s'mores. That's what we're going to do, yeah, because we're going to win. It just so depresses me because there's going to be so much death for nothing. I'm not a squeamish man, and if somebody has to die in order to achieve a goal, a reasonable goal, well, I'm going to feel bad about it, but let's make it happen. I'm not squeamish at all, but when you see waste of lives, it's one thing when the life of a man, the life even of innocent people, might be destroyed in order to achieve something more long-lasting. It's tragic, it's regrettable, but it's understandable. It makes sense. There's a rationale for it. But this is just insane. And it's all because of the propaganda. And the propaganda has to end, and people have to get realistic.